Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the 23rd episode of Core Unit Launchpad Sessions. I'm Retro, a contributor with the Sustainable Ecosystem Scaling Core Unit at MakerDAO, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Mariano and Verli from the proposed Maker Talent Core Unit. A little bit of background, Maker Talent is a team that is currently being incubated by SES to address the needs of attracting top talent to MakerDAO, and the need for Maker Talent is highlighted by another SES research project that we have, Project X-Ray, where our team is mapping out the journey of contributors, specifically developers, from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. I wanted to bring this up because similar to how Project X-Ray has invested months of effort into mapping out the developer journeys, Maker Talent will now introduce us to their core unit mandate of unlocking comparable insights for all roles at the DAO. So with that, Mano, please take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard, for having us and for the opportunity to share some updates about the Maker Talent Core Unit. Given we are a core unit under request for comments and not very well known yet, we perhaps can start with introducing ourselves. My name is Mariano. I am up for voting as facilitator for this core unit. I have more than 10 years experience in providing HR support to all kinds of tech startups and fintechs. In addition to this, I am also a clinical psychologist. I have been involved with MakerDAO since September last year, creating and reshaping Maker Talent. With me, there's Virli, a third-party consultant supporting Maker Talent. She's helping us strategizing and defining our scope. Virli, would you like to briefly introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So my name is Verla. I'm an independent consultant and I'm based in Singapore. In terms of background, throughout my career, I've been able to look at talent acquisition from a different perspective. I've done retainer-based executive search. I've been heading up the talent acquisition execution from a regional business unit perspective and also from a geographical perspective. Later on, I got more involved in infrastructure building and in HR transformations. And I've also been heading up the Asia Pacific Talent Management Center of Excellence for driving a new talent management agenda across 17 countries in Asia Pacific. So I've been supporting both startups and multinational companies in fintech, high tech, biotech, and also in mobile gaming. And in addition, I also am a mentor for an HR technology accelerator, which has a basis here in Southeast Asia. And currently I'm helping Mariano with, like you said, strategizing and defining, what this Maker Talent CU should be about.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So a little bit about the agenda. Can we move to the next slide? Thank you. As of December 8th, we have submitted our minutes for comments. So today we would like to provide you with some further updates on where are we with everything. And this is the agenda for today. We'll be talking about changes in the scope of the Talent Core Unit, the updated vision, mission, and strategy, 2022 priorities and the roadmap, and we will also open up the floor for any questions that you might have in regards to the Talent Core Unit. So let's talk about the change in scope. So after reading your contributions to the meets and having also discussions with the SES and delegates, we realized that the scope of the Talent Core Unit needed to be broadened. Instead of coming with concrete tactical solutions, we needed to think more strategically about people practices to support SES with their overall growth plan. Some of you might have noticed in the SES presentation from last Friday, a lot of the priorities listed about finding cross-core unit solutions and for the challenges in the performance area and people area were top priority. That was a priority without limiting the ability of each core unit to run autonomously. So the second point, we're moving from one-stop shop to a new model that we needed so we can empower core units with best practices and proper data on how they're performing. Always, of course, from the people practices perspective. And third, rather than focusing on hiring only, we needed to think about the whole set of experiences that contributors go through in MakerDAO from entry to exit. Given each one of those experiences might impact our ability to retain them. And fourth, contributor listening. Rather than making centralized decisions in the first place, we needed to actively listen our core contributors themselves about what their needs and priorities are in terms of people practices. So we also have updated our vision. So keeping this previous insights, can we move to the next slide? Thank you. So keeping this the previous insights in mind, our vision was updated to attract and retain the best crypto talent in a sustainable manner by building the best hiring and contribution experience in the industry. So basically, the way to set yourself apart from other DAOs in an open source tech environment like the one we're playing is having a well-defined DAO's mission and a strong culture, but also by the DAO's ability to provide an outstanding contributor experience. So the better the experience the contributors are going through with your people practices, the more eager the people will be to join the ecosystem in the long term. About the mission, in order to build the best hiring and contribution experience, we will establish a talent core unit that is the center of expertise and that will empower other core units to run autonomously and attract and retain core contributors in the most efficient manner. So the idea is that Maker Talent will research, design, and deploy best people practices for the DAO ecosystem. This will include selection, design, and deployment of tools and technologies, and in addition to this, creating auditable processes, stakeholder communication, and training, and providing hard data about experience that contributors would have with each other in terms of people practices. So in terms of strategy, so as you will see here, the contributor experience with each of the different people practices will be the core measurement for the talent core unit and central to defining challenges and priorities. This approach is basically applying the concept of customer experience towards building people practices. As you can see here, for example, we have mapped the customer experience, but we have used the model of customer experience, but for mapping the hiring. So we have awareness, consideration, conversion, engagement, and advocacy. I think you need to move one slide. Okay, I'm following my own. Okay, and the next one. There you go. So, good. If we want to build a proper talent acquisition infrastructure, we also need to prioritize building some other dependable parts of the contributor experience. This is super important. So in particular, we need to improve the workforce planning to better forecast the demand for contributors and resources that we need. At this moment, we have no data, and as a consequence, it's very difficult to make good forecasts. Also, we need to get a proper job evaluation system in place that can determine the impact and complexity of each role relative to one another. And this is a very technical process that requires analyzing each role in depth and breadth within the same core unit and across others. All this must be linked to a compensation system that is fair and equitable and that can be used across core units if needed. This would be similar to the MKR retention bonus plan that was deployed by SES. We also need to look at automating the admin onboarding for all stakeholders. This admin onboarding that I'm referring to is all about the practical onboarding of core contributors to the DAO, rather than an onboarding into the Maker ecosystem, like, for example, the X-ray projects. So for now, we will limit this part to the admin onboarding, rather than including onboarding training of new contributors, at least until there is more alignment on the content that Maker Academy will produce. Can we move to the next slide, please? Amazing. So we are in priorities 2022. Given that the contributor experience will be the measurement for success of Maker talent and central to defining challenges and priorities, we need to underpin all touch points of the contributor experience with an experience management platform. This will pull out data indicating how good or bad their experiences with a particular people practice. This is a very innovative way that put us in a possibility of listening to the contributors on an ongoing basis. And this will also enable us to take swift actions and apply fixes wherever they're needed. About the roadmap, the next slide, please. Based on these deliverables, the expected ROI and the expected bandwidth we have developed the high-level roadmap for our 2022 priorities, which is the one that you can see here. Next steps in the following slide. Amazing, thank you. So in terms of next steps, everyone can still submit comments or reach out to us for any further discussion. We had and we are still having a lot of insightful conversations with delegates and stakeholders in Maker, and we can say that people practices are a top priority for all of them. We will also further analyze MIPS 39 and 40. When it comes to the talent budget, we needed to update it in the light of a broader scope as the core unit as a center of expertise, and there will be further updates on the budget. After this, we will be able to submit it for the voting February cycle that starts the second Monday of February. That's it for today. We would like to open the floor for any questions you may have around Maker Talent.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mano. If anybody has a question, please feel free to unmute yourself at this time.
Also, Billy will answer questions with me if you like.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and get things kicked off here. The thing that stuck out most to me, I think from the presentation, was how you said to democratize people practices. So to me, that sounds like you're going to be conducting more stakeholder interviews with contributors rather than the facilitator. Is that true, or could you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Maybe I'll take this one.
Okay.
So first of all, we're going to create a starting point based on the input that we're receiving from, the comments on the meets and from, stakeholder interviews. But once we have the employee experience platform in place, we can, subtract data and input from the different contributors in a more data manner. And based on the outcomes of that platform, we will be able to have better insights in where the breakdowns are and where we need to do fixes. So basically, the further we iterate the whole infrastructure of TalentCU, the more democratized it will become.
God.
Yeah, I like to follow up there. So I think when you think about talent core unit, me personally, maybe others don't, but I think of this as a headhunting type of operation, right? Where you're out there competing with other headhunters for the best talent available. And when you think about it, this is just a talent core unit for one specific protocol, right? MakerDAO. So it's not really competing against other headhunters. So would you consider your team more of a, and maybe Verle, or I'll call you V, Verle, I don't know how to pronounce your name properly, but maybe V, you can expand on this. Do you guys see yourself more as an HR team, sort of where you are not only pulling in the talent, best talent possible, but also kind of helping not only with the onboarding and learning how to, report back to the MKR token holders, but also kind of being that in between where you also are having the best interest of the new hires coming into MakerDAO? Hopefully that makes sense.
Okay, so basically we are not setting up an HR department, we are not setting up a people department, we're setting up a department that's going to focus on contributor experience. This is a very advanced HR type of model that's currently only be used by a very small amount of companies that are already having a very agile and decentralized environment for their execution. I think the best example you have there is, for instance, an Airbnb. So basically, the experience department, so in our case, it's contributor experience. We are basically providing best practices that the core units can use to run their CU as autonomously as possible. So we're providing tools and guidance to them to be sure that they can run their people practices as efficient as possible without having to look into too many details themselves. So we are covering more than just hiring. We're covering everything from the moment that people get to hear about opportunities, further down to really onboarding. It's going to cover goal setting, learning. It covers the whole cycle until even the exiting. So even if we look at the pure hiring part as part of that overall contributor experience cycle, hiring is not about headhunting. It's about building proper talent acquisition infrastructure. It's about making sure that we are putting the right sourcing channels in place. That is going to include sourcing channels focusing on active candidates and sourcing channels focusing on passive candidates. One of the sourcing channels will be agencies, but in a best practices environment, agency usage should always be less than 10%. If you're more than 10%, that means that you're not functioning properly. So it's about a lot more than being a headhunter organization. It's about really end-to-end talent acquisition, if we're talking about the hiring aspect, and it's about the full contributor experience from entering until exiting the MakerDAO. For now, the focus is really on building best practices for our internal CUs, but who knows, further down the road, this could also be provided as some kind of service to other DAOs. But we're not there yet. We need to start small, and then we can see how we go from there.
And
Is
I
that
would
a
like
bit
to
an answer to your
also,
question?
Yeah, for sure. Mariano, go ahead. I'll let you go.
I know, just I would like to add something that when it comes to, I agree with what Billy said, but I also like to add that the challenge here is not only hiring and matching one position to another. We have lots of discussions when it comes to what would be the right business model for us, because in the comments in the meet we receive some questions regarding why you don't act as an agency. And this is mainly the reason why what Billy has just explained. We went to cover the whole contributor experience, and there are quite a lot of challenges when it comes to not only matching positions and the hiring process, but also detecting talent internally inside the core unit, helping them perform, bringing people to the ecosystem. And also, I want to be honest, Maker is a big brand, and we have a lot of room for innovation when it comes to invent or create or have at least an approach to research to more decentralized people practices, like how are DAOs going to decentralize people practices in 5 years' time. So these are questions that is on us to like have at least a first approach, and this is amazing to be in a position like this. There are many things to do in terms of the decentralization of how we manage candidates, and also in terms of the security of the information, and also we can talk about tokenized communities in the future, and we can create many initiatives with other DAOs in terms of hiring and talent. That's it. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so you're pretty much, you're kind of playing that, you're addressing kind of the compliance, you're kind of setting a tone for compliance of how a new employee should understand their role as a core unit team member. You're clarifying and you're also kind of like selling the culture of MakerDAO, right? So, so I guess how are you as far as like onboarding, right? And Maker's been known to be slow when it comes to onboarding collaterals more than anything, or even core units, right? So, what's your thinking behind that? I mean, how can we improve the slowdowns of onboarding and delaying productive new team members that you guys onboard?
Well, there are many things. I mean, for onboarding, you have the admin side, you have the training part, which is more in the HR world, we call it the induction of an employee or a contributor. So basically, you know, Maker Academy has just started, and they're creating materials. One of the top priorities for them is the training for facilitators and an onboarding training. I think this is crucial. This is key for us. Also, when it comes to the admin stuff, there are many ways of automating the process. There are now tools that will help you automating the process of onboarding a facilitator. So this is a 360 strategy. So we need to be fast in terms of industry domain. We need to come up with people practices that show success cases, because here in the DAO, let's be honest, there's no formal authority. We cannot force core units to do anything. So the idea is to empower them, to bring value to them, and offer a repertoire of tools that they can use if they want to, and gradually start working together in a more aligned way. That will help us a lot of in terms of the scalability, and also in terms of the number of core units that we would like to onboard in the next 2 years.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And last question, I promise. I recently heard an interview where an individual was kind of critiquing DAOs for, and you might have seen it on the forum post that I posted there for GovComms. The DAOs are known to be stingy, right? They're not properly paying individuals the right amount that they're worth. I was wondering what your thinking is behind that, to try to, you know, entice someone who's right now working at maybe one of the top FANGs of the world or something similar, Fortune 500 companies. Like, what's your thinking behind as far as how DAO should be incentivizing individuals to come and work on this side of the world? And thank you for answering all the questions. Appreciate it.
No, thank you for the questions. So I believe that there is an urgent need in our DAO of a compensation framework. We are a global DAO, and we kind of need urgently this, because otherwise in 1 or 2 years it's going to be a problem. It is true that we need a reference, because it's not the same hiring someone in Singapore or New York or Argentina. So the way we are approaching this is with a proper job evaluation, right? So before talking about compensation, we need to talk about job evaluation. What are the tasks? What are the references? And how much the market is paying this? We are in a niche inside the niche, which is we're in IT and we are in blockchain. So I think that to start the house from the base, what we need to do is set up a job evaluation program that will help us defining how many positions do we have, how they differ to one another and between core units. And that will help us understand ourselves, and that linked to a compensation system that will help us a lot when it comes to, you know, like paying in a more equitable way. Of course, there will be differences, but that's natural. The cost of living is not the same in every country, but with a proper frame, then we can adapt ourselves to that. But at the moment, we are facing a problem that is hard, that it's urgent to attend, because in 2 years, if we're not aligned when it comes to compensation, that could be a big problem for the DAO. Retro.
Oh, thanks again, man.
Thanks to you, Frank.
Yeah, thank you for the questions, Frank. If anybody else has questions, please feel free to unmute at this time.
I have one. So maybe I thought you could talk a bit about the work that you are already doing with the core units in the DAO.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question. Well, as I said before, I started in September, and the first thing we did was trying to implement an ATS where we can start connecting all the opportunities that we've got, because there was no point where people can know the openings that we've got. And what I learned so far is that it's very important for core units to decide what kind of help, until which extent they need help. So many core units came to us saying, from you, I just need you to post. The approach since September for now until now was only in terms of hiring, right? Because this is what was at the beginning, the scope was that. And what I realized is that they need to decide the type of help they need. So some core units, they came to us and said, just post an ad and I will manage my own candidates. Others, they want us to go with them until the end of the compensation and the negotiation. That some of them, they wanted market insights. So what I have discovered so far is that the approach that you need to have in such a complex ecosystem is everything. And this is why I think it's important for us to coordinate actions, not only with Make Academy, but also with governance and SES, right? We are a complex organization. We need to tolerate certain degree of frustration on things that we don't know how we will manage, because we need to invent them. And on other extent, it is also true that we're going to come up with practices that are very innovative. Having a platform for contributor experience is something new. So as long as we have the data, and as long as the core units can decide their own priorities, there's a part of the roadmap that will be created ongoing. So if core units can decide what are their priorities, we can better forecast not only the workforce that we will need, but also the priorities in terms of people practice. Did I answer your question about it?
Yeah, to an extent, definitely.
Okay.
Do you have a few examples of, I mean, maybe we don't need to name names, but of how you interact with the core units and the results that we got from that?
I could actually give an account if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Sure.
early on in the Talent CU's incubation, I actually had the pleasure of working with Theodore to hire our team, and I'm from GovComms, our team's third full-time hire. So in parallel, though, we did do our own, separate sort of hunt for applicants, but working with the team, they set up a sort of weekly check-in, and it was canceled as needed. And they did a few things. So they interviewed me about, what exactly was the job description. They worked with me to sharpen the job description, requirements, nice to haves, et cetera, et cetera. I also made them aware of secondary preferences for what I was looking for in the hire. Like, for example, I was actually looking to hire a female for the role. But at the end of the day, of course, I went with the best individual rather than, basing the hire on gender. So in general, yeah, we went through this sort of weekly process, and every week they would give me, one or two applicants throughout the entire process. And eventually we found somebody. We didn't find anybody through their particular recommendations, but I think that was just luck of the draw. Thomas Flitter, who we did hire, we found through LinkedIn by posting the job there and kind of doing that parallel hunt there. But in general, working with them was very comfortable. Theodore was responsive. He followed up when he needed to. And yeah, I had a good experience working with the team. They also posted the actual job description on their centralized site where multiple core units can put up job offers. And so, yeah, it was a good experience from my perspective.
Thank you, David. I'd also like to add that at this stage, As I said, many core units can decide to which extent they need help, but it's also always good to have options. As so far, the way we have been hiring and implementing people practices was each core unit deciding their own priorities. And this implies a lot of a high cost of opportunity for facilitators, because when you're not an expert on hiring, when you don't have any people practices and your core business is to make your core unit work, that demands a lot of time. So the requirement of thinking, so at least having a team that is coming together and helping you, addressing a map with a good map of the channels that you can use, even if you don't want them to help you in the whole process. That helps a lot, and that at the end of the day, that saves a lot of time. So I think that this is important, and in the second chapter, what we will do is help also with compensations. At the moment, all the core units are working with no frame for compensation, no frame for job evaluations, and each core unit is a different world. So being aligned in terms of this compensation and job evaluation practices is a top priority for us.
Yeah, I also want to add one more thing that I didn't hear mentioned, but I think is a really great advantage for having a talent core unit at Maker. So, you sourced a lot of candidates, and I imagine you have the same process for every core unit that comes to you. And in doing so, you're building up sort of like a list of potential hires for the future, even if they might not work out now. You guys have that access to that group of people. So there is a sort of synergy for sourcing really great applicants. And so I think that's also been understated, and I think is a great advantage to having a talent CU.
Yes, and as I said, the challenge here is not only matching one position and doing the typical hiring process, but also helping bringing people to the ecosystem. At the same time, there are many facilitators and there are many bright people in working with us that could be a potential new facilitator. That we have many projects in the pipeline. SES has lots of opportunities detected, and it would be very interesting to also seek for internal talent to be facilitators in the future, to run projects. We have people working part-time for Maker that could become, can expand the level of contribution that they do. And nobody's mapping the complexity of the environment that we're working in. So this is something that is also one of the challenges that we've got. Retro.
Excellent. Thank you for that little tidbit, David, as well, for the experience. I'll share a quick experience from my side as well. When I was first onboarded, noticing that Juan left the chat, I was asked to write my own onboarding. So that was a strange experience, coming from a very centralized world. But something that we brought up on our last offsite as well was talking about evaluations and, like you said, the compensation level. So correct me if I'm wrong, but if a core unit, say, doesn't have the competency or the experience of doing some of these HR tasks, like building out these frameworks, they can go to you and receive, say, like an onboarding guide or a evaluation guide that we don't necessarily have to create from scratch to implement in our core unit. Is that correct?
Yes. Does anybody have any more questions for us?
One thing I was interested in is that the whole concept of the talent pool, and in particular the question of how do you even surface the hiring needs within a DAO, right? Because just talking to the core units is only going to give you these micro perspectives on their own scope, their own problems, but not necessarily on the level of the DAO. Is that something you've been thinking about, how to deal with that?
So the best way of approaching this is being in touch with more like the pipeline of projects that we have and the it was something that you mentioned last Friday. So if we are able to identify opportunities and risks and projects that will make us compete other DAOs and that will help us be stronger, that is also a very good addition to being in touch with other DAOs. So I think that a key thing that we need to take into account is have industry domain, knowing what are the projects in the pipeline, knowing other DAOs, co-create solutions, and at the same time being able to suggest, for example, people that you can find there in a convention, in a congress. There are many ideas that we can bring through the talent aspect to the ecosystem. So core units not always they cannot always start from a project. They can also start by bringing someone to the ecosystem that has ideas or is super bright. So this is there are different ways in that will make us grow, and that would be one of them. So I think that as well as SES, we also need to know the projects. We also need to be in touch and be a platform to bring people to the ecosystem, to bring smart people to make it out, and also have always one eye internally, because there's a lot of talent inside that can be promoted. It's material for being a facilitator, and people that probably they just started with us, and in 5 years they grow a lot in terms of skills and knowledge of the ecosystem. And if we're in contact with them all day, having a strong knowledge of the blockchain ecosystem is very valuable. Every day I'm receiving messages on LinkedIn from people that they want to become part of the ecosystem and they don't know where to start. And so all the things that by being in the ecosystem, by staying in the talks, this is very valuable for us and for the talent aspect. So yes, I think that this is one of the key aspects, and I am also pro of bringing people to the ecosystem. So this is one of the initiatives that I will definitely do in Maker Talent. Every now and then doing webinars, every now and then creating initiatives to meet people, meet developers. X-Ray Project gave us a lot of food for thought when it comes to that. So there are loads of people that are interested in the blockchain world with lots of prejudices, questions to be asked, and someone needs to address it. Someone needs to be the platform that they can use to, start bringing more to this. Otherwise, in 5 years, we're going to have a big issue here, because the blockchain ecosystem is growing super fast, and we don't have enough people at the moment that are accumulating years of experience in the industry. So that's the second thing that we need to do in the long run in order to bring people to the ecosystem.
Yes, thank you for that. And I think one of the earlier discussions, they brought up the idea of, I think you call it, or Vela called it, the internal job market or something. Is that this idea of organizing this internal, or the marketplace of opportunities on the one hand, candidates on the other hand, so to continuously reignite people's interest by presenting them with new opportunities within the DAO?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we are considering, basically creating an internal marketplace, but it is quite complex and we need to have other components in place before we can kind of get that up and running. It's an overlap with talent management, and especially with internal mobility within talent management. So yes, we are going to cover that, but the earliest it will be Q4 or maybe next year.
Amazing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have other examples of other companies? Is that the Airbnb company, what they're doing, or is this like a known practice?
Internal marketplaces is kind of the most fancy thing that people are basically doing for the last 3 years. So the most advanced companies are implementing special platforms that facilitate that kind of mobility. but in addition to really job evaluations system, you also need to be able to map out individual skill sets. And at this point in time, we are not there yet. It's a huge exercise. So that's why we did not prioritize it for 2022, although we may kind of kickstart it at the very end.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions, Wouter. We'll leave the mic open for another 10 seconds here for any other last lingering questions. And if there are not any, I'd like to thank Mano again for presenting the Maker Talent core unit. I know you're not the HR department, but I'm still gonna call and complain to you when Wouter doesn't approve my time off. Are there any other last any other last thoughts that you'd like to share with the group here?
No, thank you very much for everyone. I appreciate a lot your time, and thank you very much. This has been a great experience, and we are super motivated to continue with this adventure in Maker. So thank you very much again. Cheers.
Thank you.